And we're live for the latest edition of Nick Valencia Live. Hey, everybody. Happy Tuesday, December 2nd. I can't believe we're in December already. My kids are all over me for not putting up the Christmas decorations yet, but it's one of those years where it's just like, I can't believe we're here, man. So totally caught off guard. But here we are. We are post-Thanksgiving break. It's been a while since we've had a show. We didn't have a show on Thanksgiving. We usually have a show every Tuesday and Thursday, but we took a break. And it was a much needed one because things are picking up. And if you think things are dying down, you are wrong. Just take a look at our social media where clips we posted yesterday shows that Trump's deportation forces are spreading across America. It's not just Democratic cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, places like Charlotte, where I was recently. We saw some clips out of Long Branch, New Jersey. And one of the more chilling things that we saw from these clips was that it appeared that these suspected feds were going door to door in apartment complexes. These clips are spreading like wildfire all over TikTok and on Instagram and seem to be just gaining in traction. We're seeing these undertrained, underqualified, fast-track feds that have now been on the streets for over a month now. Some of these start dates were October 1st, and we're now seeing some of these underqualified, undertrained individuals in their brutal actions in taking people into custody. And it doesn't seem that they are pulling back at all any. And this is something that, I took to a former ICE agent. Last week, I talked to an ICE prosecutor who left the agency in August. And it was a really sobering conversation and an eye-opening conversation in more ways than one. This ICE prosecutor, this former ICE prosecutor, was a self-described Republican. He said that he's not a MAGA Republican, but he says he agrees with what is being done on the streets. And he continuously pushed back at claims of any of it being unlawful. Agents wearing masks and refusing to identify themselves, he said perhaps against policy, but not unlawful. He said this idea that agents have warrants, but aren't showing the warrants, even though policy says that they should. He says that's not unlawful, perhaps against policy, but not unlawful. And he went on to give a full-throated defense of agents en masse, saying at this point, the game has changed and that federal agents are scared for their lives, that they're scared of being doxxed, they're scared of being followed home, they're scared for their own personal safety. And he continuously, just anything I brought up, he pushed back on. And it's interesting because, he had said initially that he was tired of the internal politics in the agency. And then anytime I brought up those internal politics, he defended them. One of the things that he did offer us, though, he offered us the chance to continuously or to continue this conversation with him and to use him as a source. He has a lot of friends that are still in the field. And he really confirmed to us what we have long suspected and we've long talked about on this show, is that cruelty is the point. And one of the more chilling details that he offered was that even in these non-criminal court hearings where people are going through it the right way, where they're presenting themselves at their immigration court hearings, that it is a directive from the Trump administration to have federal agents just basically just sort of parked outside the courtroom to act as this optic of intimidation. They're hoping that this fear causes people not to show up to their court dates, which then gives them a warrant for detention and eventually gets them out of this country. They are hoping that this tactic, this deliberate and intentional tactic, which they say has worked, will continue to work. It's almost as though, he didn't say it, but it's almost as though this administration wants only native-born Americans here. We already saw this conversation come up earlier this summer about the idea that birthright citizenship was in jeopardy of being taken away. That hasn't really been much of a talking point recently, but it's certainly something that's on the table. Everything is on the table in Trump's America. And that's part of the concern that we brought to Congressman Jimmy Gomez. In a pre-recorded interview, we sat down for 30 minutes with Congressman Jimmy Gomez, a representative from my hometown of 34th District in California, Northeast LA. And we asked him, what are Democrats doing right now to hold the Trump administration accountable? And have they done enough to insulate the community from further terror? And we're thrilled to be joined by Representative Jimmy Gomez, the representative from my hometown of Northeast LA. How are you, Representative?
Good. How are you doing?
We're doing great. We're doing great. We want to dive right into it. And there's a lot going on in Washington. I guess I'll just ask you straight up, how are you part of the solution?
I'm part of the solution by making sure that we fight back every single day. And the reason why is that if we don't fight back, what people think, what the Republicans think is allowable will become normal. That means that temporary troops in our streets all over the country will become permanent. And that means that the abuse that you see is going to become permanent. And that the one big, beautiful bill that they passed when it cuts Medicaid by almost $1 trillion, when it cuts food stamps by $200 billion, when it invests $175 billion in a slush fund for a deportation force and national police force that's at Trump's beck and call, well, that becomes permanent. So my goal is to fight back every single day, to go and educate the public so that they know what's going on and what we're trying to do to undo it. Because if we don't, that means that we're that all of this stuff is going to become very, very hard to undo. And then at the same time, providing providing a roadmap of what I would say is an affordability agenda or an agenda for the American family, affordable childcare, affordable housing, an opportunity to go to college, start a small business, stuff that I've been working on for a number of years. So we're putting all those pieces in place, but we have to fight back every single day.
And you were also recently at an oversight committee because you plan on holding the agents that are out there doing these brutal acts, unlawful acts, you plan on holding them accountable. And we have a brief soundbite from you addressing the media after you emerged from that hearing. Let's take a listen.
Individuals that work for Donald Trump believe that they're immune, that they're untouchable. But today, with this hearing led by the Oversight Committee, led by Ranking Member Garcia, we're telling them that you might think you're safe, but we're going to come after you. If you violated the law, threw somebody down, don't think it ends when Donald Trump is out of office. This will not end until we hold every single person that have violated the Constitution and the rights of people in our communities accountable.
I'm wondering, what is being done to hold those individuals accountable? There's a lot of us in the Latino community that fear that the actions that we're seeing, there's going to be no accountability to those feds or suspected feds out there doing this.
One of the things that Democrats started doing, but specifically the Oversight Committee, they created a portal that people can go and upload videos that can provide personal testimony of abuses of what they've saw or experienced when it comes to the ICE raids or the CBP raids, so that we can have a documented account of what occurred. That's the first step, because one of the things that a lot of these folks who are wearing the mask and who are terrorizing neighborhoods are going to try to do is to say that they're only following orders, that they're not accountable for their actions, X, Y, and Z. You name it, they're going to try to come up with an excuse. But once we need to document it, and when we get it back into power, not only in the House of Representatives and the Senate, but when we take back the White House, that's when the real justice will occur. But we need a documented case along the way so that when the time comes, people can be held accountable for either violating the law, statutes, or the Constitution itself.
It's fascinating that you say that these individuals are violating, the law. I talked to a former federal prosecutor that was part of the ICE prosecutorial team, and he was defending the actions of these agents to me last night, saying that the agents are scared and that they're not violating the law, that they're violating policy, but that's not unlawful. When you hear things like this, and this is somebody who left the agency because he didn't like what Trump was doing, in his own words, and is still defending the actions of his former peers out there on the streets.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's trying to go through his head and say, did I violate the law? So we're going to look at what we can do to make sure that we put the pieces in place. But here's the thing. If we don't hold these individuals accountable, that they can just use, I was following orders as an excuse, then the next time it's going to be even worse. The next time they're going to be even outside the bounds of the law by a greater extent. So we need to do this in order to bring balance back into our system.
Yeah, it's really crazy. He got emotional. He's like, I'm not the Gestapo, and any journalist that, finds merit in that. And I said, look, the fact is, you've got people, your peers, in masks. You have them without warrants, or maybe with warrants, but just to be difficult, they're not showing those warrants. You have to think, like, people are seeing this as straight up fascism. What do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the things that we've been seeing is when they go into neighborhoods, they're not targeting people with existing quote unquote criminal records, like they said.
Right.
They're really targeting people based on the color of their skin, their country of origin, or their perceived country of origin. If they speak English well or not, if they work at a day labor site or kind of a job that they deem as held by undocumented immigrants. So that's how they're getting targeted. So it's that right there is, I believe, a violation of the Constitution. It is profiling, and it's violating those individual rights. And then when you probably go down to the nitty gritty, one, they arrested U.S. citizens,
Right.
which they're not allowed to do. That's a violation. The 170 plus officers that arrested those 170 U.S. citizens, well, they need to be held accountable. So to say that they're not doing anything against the law is not correct.
Yeah, even then, the Fourth Amendment applies to everybody against unreasonable search and seizure. And so, this idea that they're moving in good faith, or Christine Noem saying that Americans are not caught up in this, she means white Americans. We see it with our own eyes. We see the truth, Representative. I want to pivot and talk about the Metropolitan Detention Center, because it was earlier this summer that was sort of ground zero for the social resistance movement. A lot of people forget that this all started in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
This was the testing ground, and what a hell of a year that LA has been through. I want to talk about your personal experiences as an elected member of Congress trying to get into this facility and being denied. I want to show a clip here really quick to our audience to remind people what you went through.
Hi, everyone. So I'm here at the Detention and Processing Center in downtown LA with Norma Torres. We wanted to kind of come and give you an update. We are still being denied entry into the facility, which is our right by law to conduct oversight on the well-being and the conditions of well-being of these individuals, also the conditions of these facilities. These folks, all of a sudden you see that folks are wearing masks. I'm holding a wet tissue. Norma has a mask, is because they're spraying some type of irritant into the air to push us back. But the people here are not, these are mostly attorneys. They're members of Congress. There's people with organizations. They're the press, and they're spraying something.
So one of the things I want to kind of be clear is that members of Congress do have a right to conduct oversight. It's actually a public law. And what I would do is I would go and present myself, state the statute and my congressional ID, and they denied us access. And I was also wearing my lapel pin, as you could see in the video. So they're supposed to allow us to get in, which they did not. And then eventually we were allowed in, but it was scheduled, and it was scheduled like weeks out. It was by a different member of Congress who wanted to do it. I allowed him to do it, knowing that they would just clean up the place, right? So you would basically see that there was no hardly anybody out there, no overcrowding conditions. So when we get in, it was empty. It was like two people in there. One was talking to somebody from the Consul General's office from Mexico. Somebody else was in one of the holding pens, and it was completely empty. That's never the case. So what they
did the similar thing in Family Separation 1.0, where representatives would go into these Border Patrol stations and they would reek of freshly washed bleach. What are they trying to hide? I'm sure that you had the same question.
No, it was even worse than that. So, and then what they would say is that nobody's supposed to be held there more than 12 hours. They moved it to 72 hours. And then they said, nobody's been held here for more than 72 hours. But then I talked to families, and they're, my loved one was taken in on a Sunday, and they were let out or transferred to a detention center, permanent detention center, on a Friday. So that sounds like more than 72 hours. So they would make up facts every single time. And when the first time I was denied access, they said it was because it was unsafe conditions. There was 1,000 protesters outside, and there was nobody there. It was me and a couple, maybe it was about 20 of us, but 1,000 protesters. It was mostly attorneys, the press, and my staff. So they just straight up lie in order to kind of create a public narrative of disorder. So what I ended up doing still, though, is myself and a group of 11 other members sued this administration as individual members because they blocked basically us from entering. And that is our right under the law, and that we're suing as individual members to be able to exercise that right. So that's still making its way through the courts.
Appreciate the update on that litigation. We struggle from a disease of individualism in this country. It's so evident to us here at Nick Valencia News. What is your message to those who have yet to be affected by this as individuals and are not seeing it for what it is?
Well, it's one of the things that kind of frustrates me, because when this administration is really attacking immigrants, even if they're undocumented, they're attacking the idea of the United States, that we are a country of immigrants, that it's not based on blood, it's not based on your heritage or lineage, it's based on a simple idea. If you come here, do you believe that we, the people, are the government itself, and you abide by that concept? These are the individual, but these folks, so when they attack them, that means that you're opening up to attack not on just undocumented immigrants, eventually lawful immigrants. Then it becomes people who became naturalized citizens. Then it becomes the kids that were born to undocumented immigrants. And then it comes to it goes on and on and on. Which
the private prisons aren't just going to close up shop once they stop at the unauthorized. It's going to go to the undesirable, right?
Exactly. They'll find a different reason to hold people there, and it's going to spread. It started in California, which we said it would spread. It did spread. It's gone on to Portland, Chicago, DC, now Charlotte, yeah, North Carolina, and it's going to only go from there. And that's what it's so dangerous, especially the fact that they just have this. They're developing this national police force across the country that can violate the rights of U.S. citizens, as well as people who have basic rights under our law. So this doesn't stop. And now we saw a headline just yesterday that the press spokesperson for Donald Trump in the White House, their own sister-in-law, got arrested for overstaying her visa. So it's going to eventually come home to roost. You might not know it. It might be somebody that works at a restaurant you like, a neighbor, a family member, you name it. Something's going to eventually happen.
That's right. And people in the Latino community, people in our community feel especially persecuted. And it's not just the undocumented or the unauthorized. It's literally anyone who gets in their way, even elected officials. We want to remind people about what happened to Senator Padilla at a press conference earlier this summer when he confronted Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem.
Sir, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the secretary, because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your hands off.
What do you think of when you see that video again, Representative?
I saw that occur live. I was sitting in my office and I just watched it on TV. It was on the corner because, and it really did shake me, because Alex Padilla, if you know him, he's one of the nicest guys. I don't feel like he has an aggressive bone in his body, to be honest with you. So when you see that happen to not only to a U.S. senator, but to somebody who is not a violent person or a threat in any way, and you can tell that by just meeting him, you know that can happen to anybody. After that, I spoke up, saying this is going to end up, this path we're on is going to end up having people killed, and that's what I'm afraid of. It's going to lead down to a darker and darker path, which it has, and that's where I even have concerns from my own mom. She was in Mexico for the summer, and she was coming back, and I was like, she was worried. Number one, how is she going to get back, and if she's going to be treated fairly at the border or at customs. So we discussed, hey, one of us in my family should go and get her, and things had calmed down a little bit, so she came back unaccompanied. But she shouldn't have to go through that. She's a U.S. citizen. She's been in this country for decades. She's law-abiding. She's 80 years old, 81. So like we shouldn't have to worry about that. But we're seeing that kind of fear across the country, and especially in the Latino neighborhoods, and it's impacting people's health. They're not going to doctor's appointments. They're not getting treatments that they're supposed to. They're not going shopping. So you're really seeing an economic hit across the country, and that hit is also taking place in non-Latino communities as well.
Congressman, what does it say about where we are as a country, as a society, that basically every Latino has a backup plan about when ICE comes or DHS comes to their doorstep?
It says that we got to make sure that the American people wake up, because like I said, it doesn't stop with Latinos or undocumented immigrants. It keeps going. If you disagree with this administration on a policy or you speak out, a good example is the 6 members of Congress, senators and House representatives.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Who basically said, you're obligated not to follow unlawful orders. That is a fact. That is not something that they made up. And now that it was referred to the FBI so that they will be investigated to kind of chill people's First Amendment rights, to chill their opposition. That's where we head down. And it is a fascist regime when it uses law enforcement to go after your political opponents. So if they can do that to Senator Padilla, they can do it to these members who are veterans. I mean, Mark Kelly, for crying out loud, Maggie Goodlander, Jason Crow, all of them. And also they're not Latino; they're all white. If they can go after them, they can go after any of us.
That's exactly right. And so what is the remedy to this? What are we supposed to do to this chilling effect? I mean, you reminded me about that conversation I had with the former prosecutor for ICE, who said that is the marching orders. Let's create a chilling effect. Let's send agents to these non-detained court hearings to create an atmosphere so people stop showing up for their court hearings and then legitimately become criminals for missing a court date. Yeah. Let's create this chilling effect and put agents out on the streets so then when we come to 2026, maybe people don't show up to the ballot box. So what's the remedy? What's the antidote to this Trump chilling effect?
Act. Just don't overthink it. Act. One of the things I've said to the Democrats, and I put out a memo to the freshmen in the House of Representatives: show up and fight. It doesn't matter if you're going to lose every single vote. The American people get confidence when they see their representatives not give an inch. They show up and fight. Stall or stop the Republican agenda. And the reason why is that it takes time for the American people to know what the Republicans and Trump are trying to do to them, either through the big, beautiful bill, the expiration of the ACA subsidies, or sending troops into our cities. We have to stop and slow that agenda so people have enough time to absorb what is going on. Remember, people are busy. My parents worked 4 or 5 jobs a week to make ends meet. They're not paying attention to the news, so we have to slow it down so that they can absorb it, so that they can see what's going on. And the last thing is organize. Talk to people that are not attending the big rallies or the protests. You got to go and talk to your family member who maybe voted for Trump, right? Maybe voted for a Republican, and saying, like, have that conversation in a way that doesn't off-put them, in a way that kind of allows them to think, yeah, this guy said he was going to lower overall prices on day one. He hasn't. He's actually made things worse. He said he was going to stay out of foreign wars, but he's lining up the military in the Gulf of Mexico. He said he was going to do X, Y, and Z, right? America first, but he gives $40 billion to Argentina for a bailout, but then refuses to spend $20 billion to extend the ACA subsidies. So we have to have those conversations to keep going. I would also like to tell people there's folks that have less access to attorneys, less access to status or wealth or whatever that helps protect people. I met with an immigrant family, and her husband was detained and was taken, and their kids were born here. And she was like, maybe we'll just leave. Maybe we'll just leave. And I said, no. I said, listen, your kids are Americans. You're a legal permanent resident, and you're on your way to becoming a citizen. You have a place here. And I said, don't ever give up. And her kids are all damn straight, right? And if they can find it in themselves, right? People that one husband was already taken, their dad was already taken, and they can find it in themselves. No, we're going to stay here and fight. Then the rest of us can stay here and fight as well.
Man, there's no one more determined than immigrants. They work so hard to get here. And on the point of acting, you have acted since day one. You've literally stood 10 toes down on business, man. No one can say otherwise. Before I let you go, Representative, I know that you are continuing to act. You're working on some legislation, the Housing Affordable and Defend Democracy Act. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I'm introducing a piece of legislation called Make Housing Affordable and Defend Democracy. And what it's doing is going to take that $175 billion slush fund from the One Big Beautiful Bill that's going to create this national immigration deportation force that goes to CBP and ICE. I'm going to take it and put that $175 billion into what people say is one of their top concerns, housing affordability.
What we need.
So we're going to use it to create a housing boom. So it's going to create help build starter homes, help with down payment assistance, rental assistance. It's going to help convert underutilized office and commercial real estate to housing. That's what we should be using $175 billion for. It shouldn't be used to undermine our democracy and to destroy the fabric of our communities. It should be used to build people up. And that's what I think that $175 billion should be used for. And it's also, if we allow it to stay, it's too dangerous to stay as a slush fund. It's too dangerous to stay in place, because then any president, doesn't matter if it's Donald Trump or not, can use this to terrorize neighborhoods again.
And it would give an incredible credit to first generation home buyers, which we're seeing a lot of people basically saying, hey, we can't afford homes. First time home buyers, it's getting older in age. It used to be in the late 20s, in the 30s, and now it's like in the 40s. Who can buy a home these days?
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I got my first house, my mom was more happy when I got my first house than when I graduated from UCLA or Harvard. She was like thrilled, because it also means that stability. It also means you have a place to live.
That's a slice of America too. That's like putting your flag in the ground here, right?
Exactly. And that's why it's so important. It does include down payment assistance for first generation and first time home buyers up to $50,000. It is something that is going to be transformative. And people wonder, like, why are people losing faith in our system? It's because they don't feel like they can get ahead. They don't feel like they get a fair shot. And they don't feel that that the next generation is going to be doing better than the last. That's not only immigrants, but that's also people that have been here for generations. So we need to create a fair deal for the American people, that they say, you know what? Yeah, you work hard. You're going to be able to buy a house if you want. You're going to be able to start a business or go to college. You're going to be able to do better, and your kids are going to do better. Your grandkids are going to do better. That's what I'm shooting for. And that's why this bill, to say, no, we should invest in our own people versus terrorizing them and undermining our democracy. That's what it's about.
I love that. And I love also the opportunity to be able to speak to my mom's representative. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. She wants me to know and ask you, what are we going to do to get this asshole Trump out of office? Those are a direct quote from Mama Valencia. So are you guys drafting articles of impeachment? Are you doing anything to try to get him out of office? Does that have merit at all?
Yeah, well, there's some people that are doing articles of impeachment, but here's the dilemma. Who runs the articles of impeachment? The majority. Who's in the majority? Republicans. Who's the chair of judiciary that would lead the prosecution? Jim Jordan, which is a notorious Republican from Ohio. So my goal, in order to get him out and to stomp out the MAGA ethos, right, is to implement the plan, to take back to wake people up, right? If we don't wake people up, then you're not going to get them to the polls. And then and then bracing ourselves, and I say bracing ourselves, for the second 2 years of Trump's presidency. People think he's going to go willingly. He's going to admit that he was wrong. Hell no. This guy doubles down, attacks. So he's going to get more belligerent, more angry. It's going to get more dangerous. That's why, like, when people are like, oh, I'm going to run for office, you have no idea what's coming. What's coming is a very, mark my words, dangerous period in American history. It's going to be, Donald Trump will use more troops. He will send more troops to more cities. He will try to invalidate the congressional elections, maybe not in 2026, but he's going to try in some places in 2028. And then he's going to say, if there's alternative slate of electors in Republican states, he's going to invalidate some, that it's, say if they go to the Democrats, that no one gets 270 of the Electoral College, and it goes to the House of Representatives. One state, one vote, mostly Republicans. They're going to win. This is what we're dealing with. This is like, so we're going to get rid of Trump one way or the other, but we have to be methodical about it. We have to be singularly focused. It doesn't matter if people agree or disagree on a variety of issues. We have to agree on one thing. We must stop this guy. And I'm not playing. This is not like, I don't see this as as lighthearted. No, this is what we're dealing with. And so I want people to understand we're going to stop him, but we're going to have everybody working together. The people you might not like, the people who are not on the same page on a particular issue, doesn't matter. We must stop Donald Trump.
It's a community, it's going to take the community. And you basically just laid out the fake elector scheme that he was charged for here in Georgia. What they tried to do on January 6th, create confusion, create a slate of fake electors to subvert the Electoral College and make it seem like in court that they have a good faith argument for their candidate. We hope that there's going to be more energy ahead for you because the fight is strong and you're going to have to do a lot, God bless you, Representative. And thank you so much for also seeing the vision and independent journalism. We really feel like institutions are compromised at this point, and part of our job here is to deliver the truth, make truth go viral, and to use journalism and our platform as the ultimate act of service. And we know you're doing that as a congressman. So thank you so much, Mr. Gomez.
No, I appreciate it.
All right, that was Representative Jimmy Gomez taking the time with Nick Valencia Live. We'll see you next time. No, thanks again to Congressman Jimmy Gomez, representative from my hometown of Northeast LA. And we pivot now to public opinion and how Latinos are seeing the country with a new poll released by the Pew Research Center, which shows some surprising numbers here. This is a poll, a new report exploring Latinos' perspectives on their current situation in the country. And here are some major takeaways of the data that we're about to show you. 70% of Latinos right now disapprove of the way Trump is handling his job as president. That includes Latinos who voted for Trump. 65% disapprove of the administration's approach to immigration. 61% say Trump's economic policies have made economic conditions worse. These kinds of stats go on, and really the only place that shows anything favorable towards the president is among Latino Republicans and their perspective on the economy. It is very much more favorable than compared, let's say, to a Democratic Latino. So we wanted to drill down on this public opinion poll and get in the researcher who was behind this, Luis Noe-Bustamante. He's a researcher with the Pew Research Center. Thank you so much for taking the time with us. Oh, we can't hear you. We're hoping maybe the audio gets worked out here. Let's see. You with us, Mr. Bustamante? Well, I don't know. I can't hear you. I don't have you. I'm so sorry. Try to get this worked out here. Maybe the headphone audio isn't working, or let's see. We'll work through it, and while we get, here we go. I heard something. There we go. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. We got that all worked out. Luis, thank you so much for taking the time with Nick Valencia Live. Let's get right into it. You were behind this research, behind this study. What was the most shocking and surprising to you?
Well, first of all, thank you, Nick, for the opportunity to share these findings with you. In our October survey,
Luis, we just lost you again.
Oh, apologies.
Oh, okay, here we go. All right, take
Yeah.
2. We're gonna start it over. It's live streaming. It's
Yeah.
okay. People
Yeah,
understand.
apologies. Yeah, can you hear me well?
Yeah, I have you now. Go ahead. Let's
Yeah,
get right on.
sorry, I was saying in our October survey, we found that Latinos are increasingly pessimistic about the country's situation, about their situation as a group, but also about the Trump administration. And as you were just mentioning, across a series of questions and measures, they rate both the administration pretty negatively, as well as the situations of Latinos as a group in the country.
You know, this was fascinating to me because so much was made about people that I grew up around. You know, 55%, somewhere around there, Latino men voted for President Trump in this latest election. And so, you know, when Pew initially sent me these numbers Thanksgiving week, I was so surprised to even see Latinos who were among those that voted for President Trump. Look at the stats that we're looking at there. About 3/4 of Hispanics are dissatisfied with the country's direction, slightly higher than among Americans overall. Can you tell me, Luis, how you guys came to this? Like, what was the process in gathering these numbers?
Yes, so this is a national survey of U.S. Latino adults. We have a sample of about 5,000 Latino adults all throughout the country. It is representative of the Latino population. And this is part of our national survey of Latinos, which we do most years to try to get a read on how the U.S. Latino population is doing and their views on different topics, including their views on the political situation of the country.
And so about 5,000 people, is this broken down generationally? And did that make a difference on the answers that you got? You know, something I think that really, you know, people fall short of in this country is sort of grouping Latinos all together. I'm a 3rd generation Latino, Mexican American. You know, did the answers differentiate based on generational breakdown?
Absolutely. We do have the ability to break out the Latino adults by immigrants versus U.S. born, and among the U.S. born by those who are 2nd generation as well as 3rd or higher generation. And on some of these questions, their views do vary slightly. For example, when asked about the situations of Latinos overall, about 70% of 2nd generation Latinos, so those are Latinos who have at least one immigrant parent, say that Latinos are worse off compared to a year ago. By comparison, that number among 3rd or higher generation Latinos is 59%.
Wow. And but overall, it was still a sharp increase from last year.
Absolutely. Among all, a majority say that Latinos are worse off compared to a year ago. And this was one of our key findings because we've asked this question in the past. And it's the first time in a couple of decades of the center asking this question that a majority say that Latinos are worse off than the previous year.
This is fascinating to me because, as I mentioned, you know, it was in part Latino men who helped elect the president of the United States and were very instrumental in getting him to the White House. And here we are a year later, and, you know, we see these stats. Another thing that stood out to me, Luis, in this is that even citizens are increasingly worried about having to show their citizenship. Tell me about that.
Absolutely. We asked respondents if they worry that as they are going about their day-to-day, if they worry that they might be asked to prove either their citizenship status or their immigration status in the country. And as you see there in the chart, this concern has grown this year. From 31% who are worried in early March to 43% in our October survey. Similarly, we've asked about worry of deportation, and that too has gone up compared to the beginning of the administration.
And, you know, it's right on, in my opinion, because anecdotally, you know, going back to the summer, a lot of the Latinos in my life, in my orbit, are now, including myself, holding a copy of their birth certificate. a notarized copy of their birth certificate, a passport, some sort of extra ID in case, the worst happens, because we're seeing so many videos of American citizens, even though Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says it's not happening. We see it with our own eyes. We see that, what we've come to call them here are Kavanaugh stops, people being targeted simply because of how they look, simply because of the color of their own skin. This brings me to my next question. There is a rising share of Latinos who feel that the country is doing too much when it comes to immigration. What does that mean, doing too much?
Well, we asked respondents if they thought the administration was doing too much when it comes to deportation, specifically deportations. And as you may see there, a majority say that the Trump administration is doing too much. And you see increases, not just among all Latinos, but across party lines. You see Latino Republicans say the government is doing too much at higher levels compared to early February. Same for Democrats. They're more likely to say that now than they were at the beginning of the administration.
Yeah, we see people say, "Oh, you're doing too much. You're doing too much," colloquially, and they're literally saying, Latinos that you polled, you are going too far in terms of deportation and the way that you're going about it. Thank you so much for that clarity. We pivot now to things that are really at the top of Latinos every year. It doesn't matter the election. It's consumer prices, it's affordability of homes. What did Pew Research Center learn there in this study?
Yes, so we learned that about a third of Latino adults say they've struggled to pay for basic necessities like food, medical care, rent or mortgage, or energy, which has also been in the headlines recently. And when we looked at some of the core ones here, food, medical care, or rent, about half of Latino adults say they have struggled with at least one of these over the past year. We've also asked them about their personal financial situation more broadly, and and most rate their situation negatively. This is similar to what they said last year. Interestingly, about half of Latino adults are still optimistic about their future.
Yeah, maybe some wishful thinking there, Luis.
Right. So there is still this sense of optimism about many, even though they rate their current situation negatively, and they also rate the economic conditions in the country negatively as well.
And not surprisingly, is that Republican Latinos seem to be a little bit more optimistic about economics here when it comes to compared to Democratic Latinos.
That's right, especially when looking at the situation, the economic conditions in the country. Optimism really rose among Republicans more so than Democrats, and also at a personal level. Latino Republicans were more likely to evaluate their situation positively now than they were before, while this didn't really change among Latino Democrats.
No, this is really interesting stuff, especially what you said, for the first time in decades of doing this research, that sharp increase of feeling like the situation is worse. One of the things I think about looking at these stats is it seems to indicate that people are tired of the current status quo. But then when I talk to people, there seems to be really no red line, Luis, when it comes to whether or not they're going to vote for, if they have the chance, vote for President Trump again or continue to vote Republican. So that's what I find very interesting is, I'd love to know maybe in your guys' future studies going forward, is if there is a red line for Latinos, is there something that they're willing to, this is a point of no return. There's no way that I can continue to vote how I voted in the past because we've crossed this red line. We'll leave that conversation though for another day. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you think is important to know related to this study or anything that you want to highlight? Now's your chance.
Once again, thank you for the opportunity. I think we covered the key points of this study. There are some things, of course, when it comes to worry of immigration enforcement that are interesting to us as well, including that Latinos are more likely to feel less safe than more safe with immigration enforcement, and that is really pronounced, especially among younger Latinos that are identify as Democrats, and of course Latino immigrants.
Wow, really interesting stuff. And I'm so grateful for the relationship that we have made here between Nick Valencia News and the Pew Research Center. And I thank you guys so much for thinking of us when you have new studies. We're going to continue to feature your work and your colleagues' work. We think it's very beneficial for our viewers to know where the stats are and where public opinion lies. Luis Noe-Bustamante, Research Director there at the Pew Research Center. Thank you so much for taking the time with Nick Valencia Live. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nick.
You got it. Fascinating stuff. And we'll clip that and we'll show and post it on our social media so you guys can have a little bit more understanding and, take time through it with yourself, just sort of see what the stats show. One of the things I wanted to highlight, we had some fascinating conversations, not just with the Pew Research Center, but also that pre-recorded conversation with Congressman Jimmy Gomez. And I don't know if you guys caught it, but we wanted to replay this clip and this scenario that the congressman lays out if there is some sort of challenge or dispute in the upcoming presidential election.
Donald Trump will use more troops. He will send more troops to more cities. He will try to invalidate the congressional elections, maybe not in 2026, but he's going to try in some places in 2028. And then he's going to say if there's alternative slate of electors in Republican states, he's going to invalidate some. That it's say if they go to the Democrats, that no one gets 270. No one gets 270 of the Electoral College, and it goes to the House of Representatives. One state, one vote, mostly Republicans. They're going to win. This is what we're dealing with.
So you see here, the House would choose the next president if there's a dispute with electors. It's not just if there is a dispute with electors, though. If one candidate doesn't get a majority of the vote, Article 2 of the Constitution lays this out very clearly, that each state would get one vote. Does this sound familiar or a little crazy here? Maybe not.
Every state votes exactly as anticipated. Each one of these lines represents a way in which the battleground states could come together to produce an electoral tie, 269 votes for each candidate. And if that happens, what comes next? Well, rule number one, the incoming House of Representatives would then pick the president. That's right. For all of the voting, all of the ads, all of the billions of dollars spent, the gentlemen who are going to gather in this chamber in January would then decide who the president is going to be.
So it's a little crazy. That clip is back from 2012, the presidential race between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. We had to go way back into the archives to get this conversation going because not a lot of people are talking about it. Congressman Jimmy Gomez brought it up, which really perked our interest into looking into it more. Just so we're clear, if there is a dispute with electors, if there is a candidate that does not get enough votes, popular vote, then that tie is decided by the House. And this is really where it gets interesting because even though, let's say the Democrats have the majority, the House would decide, meaning that one state would get one vote. So somewhere like what Tom Foreman, my former CNN colleague, just laid out, a place like California with tens of millions of voters would get just as much influence as, let's say, somewhere like South Dakota and North Dakota. And you know what that means? Even if the Democrats did not hold the majority, or let's say even if they did hold the majority, they still would not control enough individual states to decide who the next president is in 2028. Let's hope it doesn't get to that. Let's hope there's no funny games leading up to that. One of the things my executive producer points out here is that these same congresspeople who worked with the Trump White House to, try to go after this fake elector scheme, something that covered extensively here in Georgia, they managed to sneak in a provision in the shutdown deal that would pay up to $500,000 to any congressperson who was investigated by Jack Smith for the January 6th incident. Loyalty, it seems, does not come cheap in Trump's America. Crazy scenario. We hope it doesn't happen. I hope it doesn't get to that point. But if it does, you're a little smarter and a little more prepared for if that does happen. That's our show today on Tuesday, December 4th. We thank you guys, as always, for checking in. A special thanks to Alex Alot, somebody who we met in Los Angeles and somebody who got a lot of people to watch our broadcast today. True believer in what we're doing, a true believer in independent journalism. Because like I said, man, in that interview with Congressman Gomez, our institutions are corrupted. Our institutions have been infiltrated. And we really feel like the remedy to what we're seeing right now and the war on information is independent journalism. And we really feel like we're doing an active service here. Thank you so much, as always, for helping us make truth go viral. And we really appreciate you guys sticking out this show. As always, guys, have a great day on purpose.